The salt spray from the Persian Gulf stung Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen's face as she adjusted her rifle scope one final time, her steady hands betraying none of the doubt that had once plagued her through two humiliating failures at basic training, 3,000 yards away, through the swirling desert heat that made most marksmen see mirages instead of targets. She could make out the enemy compound where 12 American hostages had been held for 47 days. What none of the elite Navy SEALs crouched beside her knew was that the woman they now called Ghost had once been considered the most hopeless recruit in Naval Special Warfare history. A failure so complete that her instructors had recommended permanent disqualification from all combat roles. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. In exactly 90 seconds, this same woman would take a shot that would not only save those hostages but redefine the very limits of what was considered possible in military precision shooting. The fluorescent lights in the recruitment office in Des Moines, Iowa hummed with the same mechanical persistence that had driven 18-year-old Sarah Chen to this moment on a sweltering August morning in 2008. Outside, the cornfields stretched endlessly under a blazing Midwest sun, but inside this sterile government building, Sarah stared at recruitment posters promising adventure, honor, and the chance to serve something greater than herself. Her small frame, barely 5 feet 4 inches, and weighing less than 120 pounds, seemed dwarfed by the imposing desk where Chief Petty Officer Michael Rodriguez reviewed her application with the kind of skeptical expression that Sarah had grown accustomed to throughout her turbulent teenage years. Sarah's journey to this recruitment office had been anything but conventional. Born to second-generation Chinese immigrants who ran a small restaurant in downtown Des Moines, she had spent her childhood navigating between two worlds that often seemed incompatible. Her parents, David and Lynn Chen, had sacrificed everything to build their American dream around Golden Dragon Restaurant, a modest establishment that served authentic Sichuan cuisine to a community that preferred sweet and sour chicken. The restaurant's kitchen had been Sarah's playground, where she learned to move with precision and efficiency while dodging between prep cooks and servers during the dinner rush that defined their family's daily existence. Her father, David, had arrived in America with an engineering degree from Beijing University that American employers refused to recognize, forcing him to start over in a country where his accent marked him as perpetually foreign despite his brilliant, analytical mind. He had channeled his frustrated ambitions into perfectionist expectations for his only daughter, demanding academic excellence that would guarantee her the professional success that had been denied to him. Lynn, her mother, had been a mathematics professor in China before immigration transformed her into a restaurant hostess who smiled politely at customers who mispronounced their family name and made jokes about fortune cookies that their establishment had never served. The pressure to excel academically had been constant and suffocating throughout Sarah's childhood, with every grade scrutinized and every extracurricular activity evaluated for its potential contribution to college applications that would secure her admission to prestigious universities. Her parents had mapped out her entire future with the methodical precision they brought to restaurant operations, envisioning their daughter as a doctor or lawyer who would validate their sacrifices, while achieving the professional recognition that America had denied them. But Sarah had always been drawn to activities that horrified her academically focused parents. While other children in their immigrant community spent afternoons at piano lessons and math tutoring, Sarah found herself fascinated by the hunting trips that her friend Jessica's father organized every fall in the rolling hills outside Des Moines. Tom Bradley, a Vietnam veteran who worked construction during the week and guided hunting expeditions on weekends, had noticed Sarah's intense curiosity about the rifles and precision shooting techniques he demonstrated for his daughter and her friends. Against her parents' explicit wishes, Sarah had begun accompanying Jessica on these hunting trips, initially as an observer, but gradually as an active participant who demonstrated remarkable natural ability with firearms. Tom Bradley had served as a designated marksman during his tour in Vietnam, and he recognized something exceptional in Sarah's approach to shooting that went beyond mere mechanical skill. She possessed an intuitive understanding of wind patterns, distance calculation, and target movement that couldn't be taught through conventional instruction methods. Her shooting ability developed with startling rapidity under Tom's patient guidance, progressing from basic rifle safety to advanced marksmanship, techniques that impressed even experienced hunters who had been shooting for decades. Sarah discovered that she could make shots at distances that challenged shooters with far more experience, adjusting for environmental factors with an instinctive precision that seemed to bypass conscious calculation entirely. The concentration required for long-distance shooting provided an escape from the academic pressure that dominated every other aspect of her carefully controlled existence. The conflict between her parents' expectations and her growing passion for shooting created increasing tension within the Chen household as Sarah entered her junior year at Roosevelt High School. Her grades, while still respectable, had begun to slip as she spent more time thinking about ballistics and wind patterns than algebra and American literature. The discovery of her unauthorized hunting activities had prompted explosive arguments that echoed through their small apartment above the restaurant, with her parents alternately pleading and demanding that she abandon what they viewed as dangerous distractions from her academic obligations. David Chen had been particularly upset by his daughter's interest in activities that he associated with American military culture, having fled China partly to escape the militaristic atmosphere that had dominated his youth during the Cultural Revolution. The idea that his daughter might be drawn to weapons and warfare represented everything he had hoped to leave behind by immigrating to America, where he believed success came through education and professional achievement rather than violence or military service. Lynn had been equally concerned, but from a different perspective, worried that her daughter's interest in traditionally masculine activities would limit her social acceptance and professional opportunities in American society. She had worked carefully to navigate cultural expectations that often seemed contradictory, encouraging Sarah to be strong and independent while warning her against behaviors that might mark her as too aggressive or unfeminine in American professional environments. The tension reached a breaking point during Sarah's senior year when she announced her intention to join the high school rifle team, a decision that her parents viewed as open rebellion against their carefully planned academic trajectory. The rifle team required significant time commitments that would interfere with SAT preparation and college application processes, while associating Sarah with activities that her parents believed would harm her chances of admission to prestigious universities. Her academic performance continued to decline as she devoted increasing attention to competitive shooting, spending hours at the range perfecting techniques that she found infinitely more engaging than the test preparation materials that dominated her classmates' lives. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Sarah's natural shooting ability had attracted attention from college coaches who recruited competitive shooters, but her parents dismissed these opportunities as distractions from more serious academic pursuits that would lead to stable professional careers. The final crisis had occurred during the spring of her senior year, when Sarah received a partial scholarship offer from a smaller university with a strong competitive shooting program, an opportunity that would have allowed her to pursue her passion while obtaining a college education. Her parents had rejected the offer without consulting her, believing that accepting a scholarship based on shooting ability would somehow diminish their daughter's academic achievements and limit her future professional options. The argument that followed had been the most serious conflict in their family's history, with Sarah accusing her parents of trying to control her life according to their own unfulfilled ambitions, while ignoring her genuine interests and natural abilities. She had pointed out that her shooting achievements represented the kind of exceptional performance that they claimed to value, questioning why academic excellence was somehow more worthy of recognition than athletic or competitive achievement. Her parents had responded with ultimatums that forced Sarah to choose between their financial support for college and her continued involvement in shooting activities, believing that economic pressure would convince her to abandon what they viewed as adolescent rebellion. They had threatened to cut off all financial assistance if she continued pursuing shooting sports, confident that practical considerations would eventually overcome her temporary fascination with firearms. The emotional manipulation had backfired spectacularly, driving Sarah to seek alternatives that would allow her to escape her parents' control while pursuing activities that genuinely interested her. She had researched military service as a potential path to independence, discovering that the Navy offered opportunities for specialized training that could utilize her marksmanship abilities while providing the kind of structured environment that appealed to her disciplined personality. Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez had seen hundreds of young recruits seeking escape from various personal circumstances, but something about Sarah's quiet determination and focused questions about Navy sniper programs had caught his attention during their initial interview. Her small physical stature and academic background didn't fit the typical profile of candidates who succeeded in military special operations, but her test scores and psychological evaluations indicated exceptional potential for specialized roles that required mental toughness and precision under pressure. The decision to enlist had created a permanent rift between Sarah and her parents, who viewed her choice as a rejection of everything they had sacrificed to provide for her future. David and Lynn had refused to attend her graduation ceremony, unable to accept that their carefully planned academic trajectory had been abandoned for what they considered a dangerous and uncertain military career that offered none of the professional security they had sought for their daughter. Sarah's departure for basic training had been a solitary affair, with Tom Bradley providing the only family-like support as she prepared to leave Des Moines for the Naval Station Great Lakes training facility. His own military experience had given him insights into the challenges she would face as a female recruit in a predominantly male environment, but he had confidence in her mental toughness and competitive drive that had been evident throughout her shooting development. The bus ride to Illinois had provided Sarah with time to reflect on the choices that had brought her to this point, wondering whether her decision to pursue military service represented genuine calling or simply rebellion against parental expectations that had become suffocating. She understood that basic training would test her physical and mental limits in ways that competitive shooting had never challenged, requiring her to prove herself in areas where her natural abilities might not provide advantages. Her arrival at Naval Station Great Lakes had been a shock that no amount of mental preparation could have adequately addressed, thrusting her into an environment where drill instructors seemed determined to break down every assumption she had developed about her own capabilities and self-worth. The transformation from civilian to military personnel required abandoning individual identity in favor of unit cohesion and collective performance, standards that measured success according to the weakest member of each training group. Petty Officer First Class Maria Santos had been assigned as Sarah's primary drill instructor, a veteran of 2 deployments who had earned her position through demonstrated excellence in training recruits who arrived with various levels of preparation and motivation. Santos had immediately identified Sarah as a recruit who would require special attention, not because of obvious deficiencies, but because her civilian background had provided no preparation for the physical demands and social dynamics that defined military training environments. The first weeks of basic training had been a series of humiliating failures that challenged every assumption Sarah had developed about her own competence and determination. Physical fitness requirements that seemed manageable in theory proved devastating in practice, with running distances and obstacle courses that exposed her limited cardiovascular conditioning and upper body strength. Her academic intelligence, which had always been her primary source of confidence, provided no assistance with practical skills like equipment maintenance, formation marching, and tactical communications that formed the foundation of military competence. More challenging than the physical demands had been the social adjustment required to function effectively within the rigid hierarchy and collective identity that military training imposed on individual recruits. Sarah's independent personality and analytical approach to problem-solving often conflicted with requirements for immediate obedience and group conformity that drill instructors considered essential for military effectiveness. Her tendency to question instructions or suggest alternative approaches was consistently interpreted as insubordination rather than intellectual engagement. The shooting portions of basic training, which Sarah had expected to provide opportunities for demonstration of her exceptional abilities, had instead revealed the vast differences between civilian competitive shooting and military marksmanship requirements. The precision shooting techniques she had mastered during hunting trips and rifle team competitions proved inadequate for military firearms and tactical situations that emphasize speed and reliability over perfect accuracy at extended distances. Military shooting protocols required rapid target acquisition and engagement under stress conditions that bore no resemblance to the controlled environments where Sarah had developed her civilian skills. The assault rifles used in basic training had different ballistic characteristics and handling requirements than the precision rifles she had used for competitive shooting, requiring her to essentially start over in learning fundamental marksmanship techniques adapted to military weapons and tactical applications. Her struggles with military shooting had been particularly devastating because they undermined her primary source of confidence and identity, forcing her to confront the possibility that her natural abilities might not translate effectively to military environments. The drill instructors who observed her shooting performance had been puzzled by her inconsistent results, noting that she occasionally demonstrated exceptional accuracy, but lacked the consistent performance required for advanced marksmanship training. Petty Officer Santos had attempted to provide additional instruction and encouragement, recognizing that Sarah possessed underlying abilities that could potentially be developed through specialized training methods. However, the compressed timeline and standardized curriculum of basic training provided limited opportunities for individualized instruction that might have addressed the specific challenges Sarah faced in adapting her civilian skills to military requirements. The academic portions of basic training had been somewhat easier for Sarah, given her strong educational background and analytical abilities that helped her master complex information about naval operations, military history, and tactical procedures. However, even her academic success had been undermined by her struggles with practical applications that required physical coordination and team cooperation rather than individual intellectual achievement. Navigation exercises had proven particularly challenging because they required Sarah to apply theoretical knowledge under physical stress and time pressure while coordinating with team members whose performance affected her individual success. The leadership responsibilities that were rotated among recruits had exposed her difficulties with command presence and group dynamics that had never been relevant to her civilian experiences or academic achievements. As the weeks of basic training progressed, Sarah found herself falling behind in multiple areas despite her intense efforts to improve her performance through additional practice and study. Her physical conditioning had improved gradually, but not rapidly enough to meet the standards required for successful completion of the training program. More problematically, her struggles with military culture and group dynamics had marked her as a recruit who might lack the psychological characteristics required for effective military service. The counseling sessions with drill instructors had become increasingly focused on whether Sarah possessed the fundamental attributes required for successful military service, with evaluations suggesting that her academic intelligence and individual determination might not be sufficient to overcome her difficulties with physical performance and unit integration. These assessments had been devastating to Sarah's self-confidence, forcing her to confront the possibility that her decision to pursue military service had been a serious miscalculation. The recommendation for dismissal from basic training had come during the 8th week of the program, when cumulative performance evaluations indicated that Sarah was unlikely to meet graduation requirements despite her obvious effort and dedication. Petty Officer Santos had delivered the news with genuine regret, acknowledging Sarah's positive qualities while explaining that military effectiveness required specific combinations of physical, mental, and social capabilities that couldn't be developed within the constraints of basic training programs. The failure had been crushing in ways that Sarah hadn't anticipated, not just because it represented the end of her planned military career, but because it forced her to question her own judgment and abilities in fundamental ways. She had been so confident in her decision to pursue military service that the possibility of failure hadn't seemed realistic, despite warnings from her parents and others who had questioned her choice to abandon academic opportunities for uncertain military prospects. The administrative processing for her dismissal had provided time for reflection on what had gone wrong, and whether there might be alternative paths that could still lead to successful military service. Sarah had been particularly troubled by her failure in shooting activities that had once been her greatest strength, wondering whether her civilian experience had somehow been inadequate preparation for military marksmanship or whether her performance had been affected by the stress and unfamiliar environment of basic training. Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez had contacted her during the dismissal process, offering to discuss her experience and potential alternatives that might address the specific challenges she had encountered during basic training. His willingness to maintain contact had surprised Sarah, who had expected military personnel to show little interest in recruits who failed to meet training standards. But his own experience with diverse recruitment backgrounds had given him insights into cases where initial failure didn't necessarily predict long-term military potential. Their conversation had revealed that Sarah's difficulties had been primarily related to the compressed timeline and standardized approach of basic training, rather than fundamental incompatibility with military service. Rodriguez had explained that some recruits required additional preparation time or alternative training methods that could address specific challenges while building on existing strengths, suggesting that her case might benefit from a different approach to military preparation. The option to return home to Des Moines and potentially reapply for military service after additional preparation had been both appealing and terrifying for Sarah, who would have to face her parents' inevitable satisfaction at her failure while determining whether her commitment to military service was strong enough to justify another attempt. The prospect of admitting defeat and returning to her parents' academic expectations had been almost as devastating as the military failure itself. Instead, Sarah had chosen to remain in the Chicago area, finding employment that would allow her to stay near the naval training facility while preparing for a potential second attempt at basic training. Her job at a sporting goods store that specialized in hunting and shooting equipment had provided income while allowing her to maintain contact with firearms and shooting activities that remained central to her identity despite her military setbacks. The months between her first failure and second attempt at basic training had been a period of intense physical conditioning and mental preparation that addressed many of the specific challenges she had encountered during her initial military experience. Sarah had joined a civilian fitness program designed by former military personnel, focusing on cardiovascular endurance and functional strength training that would better prepare her for the physical demands of military training. More importantly, she had sought out opportunities to practice military-style shooting techniques, using equipment and protocols that more closely resembled what she would encounter during basic training. A local shooting range that catered to law enforcement and military personnel had allowed her to practice with assault rifles and tactical shooting scenarios that provided better preparation for military marksmanship requirements than her previous civilian shooting experience. Her second attempt at basic training had begun with higher confidence and better physical preparation, but had ultimately ended in failure that was even more devastating than her first dismissal. Despite her improved conditioning and shooting preparation, Sarah had still struggled with the social dynamics and leadership requirements that seemed to be fundamental obstacles to her military success. The second failure had been accompanied by stronger recommendations against future military service, with evaluators suggesting that her repeated difficulties indicated fundamental incompatibility with military culture and requirements. The psychological impact of 2 consecutive failures had been profound, forcing Sarah to confront the possibility that her military ambitions were unrealistic fantasies rather than achievable goals. She had invested nearly 2 years of her life in pursuit of military service, alienating her family and abandoning academic opportunities that might have provided more realistic paths to personal and professional success. The recommendation for permanent disqualification from all military service had seemed to close the door on her military ambitions definitively, leaving her stranded in a life situation that offered few attractive alternatives. Her relationship with her parents remained strained by her decision to pursue military service, while her lack of college education limited her professional options in civilian careers that might have provided the sense of purpose and challenge she sought through military service. The job market recession of 2010 had made her situation even more precarious, with limited opportunities for someone whose primary qualifications were incomplete. Military training and experience in retail sales of sporting goods, Sarah had faced the prospect of spending years in low-wage employment while watching her former high school classmates graduate from college and begin professional careers that offered the kind of security and advancement opportunities her parents had always emphasized. The phone call that would change everything had come on a rainy Tuesday morning in October 2010, when Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez contacted her with information about a new pilot program that might provide opportunities for individuals who had struggled with conventional basic training but possessed specific talents that could be valuable in specialized military roles. The Navy had initiated experimental programs designed to identify and develop personnel for specialized operations that required unique combinations of skills and psychological characteristics. The conversation had been carefully worded to avoid creating unrealistic expectations while exploring whether Sarah might be interested in alternative approaches to military service that could utilize her specific abilities while addressing the challenges that had led to her previous failures. Rodriguez had explained that special operations training programs sometimes required different psychological and physical characteristics than conventional military service, with selection criteria that emphasized individual excellence rather than group conformity. The possibility of pursuing specialized training had rekindled Sarah's interest in military service while forcing her to carefully evaluate whether she was prepared for the risk of another failure that might be even more devastating than her previous setbacks. The special operations community had a reputation for extremely demanding selection processes that eliminated candidates who possessed conventional military qualifications, suggesting that her previous failures might not be predictive of success in more specialized programs. Rodriguez had been honest about the odds against success in special operations training, explaining that even candidates with exceptional conventional military records often failed to meet the psychological and physical standards required for specialized roles. However, he had also noted that some of the most successful special operations personnel had unconventional backgrounds that provided unique perspectives and capabilities not found among traditional military recruits. The decision to pursue special operations training had required Sarah to overcome not just her own doubts about her military potential, but also the skepticism of family and friends who viewed her continued pursuit of military service as evidence of poor judgment and inability to accept realistic assessments of her capabilities. Tom Bradley had been the only person who encouraged her to consider the opportunity, drawing on his own military experience to suggest that special operations might be better suited to her individual talents and personality. The application process for the experimental program had been unlike anything Sarah had encountered during her previous military experiences, with psychological evaluations and performance assessments that seemed designed to identify unconventional capabilities rather than conformity to standard military profiles. The interviews had focused on her shooting abilities and analytical thinking rather than her failures in conventional basic training, suggesting that the selection criteria valued different characteristics than traditional military training programs. The notification of her acceptance into the experimental program had arrived just before Thanksgiving 2010, providing an opportunity to rebuild her military career while proving to herself and others that her commitment to service was based on realistic assessment of her capabilities rather than stubborn refusal to accept limitations. The chance to finally demonstrate her potential in an environment that might value her unique abilities had been both thrilling and terrifying. The experimental program had been based at a classified facility in Virginia where small groups of candidates with unconventional backgrounds underwent intensive training, designed to develop specialized capabilities for emerging military requirements. The program had been created in response to changing warfare patterns that required personnel with unique combinations of technical skills and psychological characteristics not easily found among conventional military recruits. Sarah's journey to Virginia had represented her final opportunity to achieve the military career she had pursued, despite repeated setbacks and widespread skepticism about her suitability for military service. The train ride south had provided time to reflect on the choices and experiences that had brought her to this point, wondering whether this third attempt at military service would finally validate her persistence or provide definitive proof that her military ambitions were unrealistic. The facility in Virginia had been unlike the conventional military bases where she had experienced her previous failures, with an atmosphere that emphasized individual excellence and innovation rather than conformity to established protocols. The other candidates in her training group had similarly unconventional backgrounds, including civilians with specialized technical skills and former military personnel who had been selected for unique capabilities rather than conventional military achievements. The training program had been structured around individual development rather than group standardization, with personalized instruction that addressed each candidate's specific strengths and challenges. For the first time in her military experience, Sarah had encountered instructors who were interested in developing her exceptional shooting abilities rather than requiring her to meet standardized performance criteria that ignored her natural talents. Chief Warrant Officer David Kim had been assigned as her primary marksmanship instructor, a former Marine sniper whose own unconventional background had included civilian competitive shooting before military service. His recognition of Sarah's potential had been immediate and encouraging, with technical feedback that helped her understand how to adapt her civilian skills to military requirements, while building on her natural abilities. The specialized training environment had allowed Sarah to flourish in ways that conventional military training had never permitted, with instruction that recognized her analytical approach to shooting as an asset rather than a deviation from standard military procedures. The program had been designed to develop individuals who could operate independently in complex situations, rather than function as interchangeable components of larger military units. For the first time since beginning her pursuit of military service, Sarah had found herself excelling rather than struggling, with performance evaluations that recognized her exceptional potential while providing constructive guidance for continued development. The transformation had been remarkable, both in terms of her military skills and her confidence in her ability to succeed in demanding environments. The specialized nature of the training had required her to master not just advanced marksmanship techniques, but also the complex planning and execution skills required for independent operations in hostile environments. The intellectual challenges had been as demanding as the physical requirements, with scenario-based training that required creative problem-solving and adaptive thinking under extreme pressure. Sarah's performance during advanced training phases had earned recognition from instructors who rarely expressed satisfaction with candidate progress, with evaluations noting her exceptional potential for specialized operations that required precision and analytical thinking. Her transformation from failed basic training recruit to exceptional special operations candidate had been so dramatic that it became a case study for the experimental program's development of unconventional talent. The graduation ceremony for the experimental program had been a private affair attended only by program staff and a few senior officers, who were evaluating the effectiveness of alternative approaches to special operations recruitment. Sarah's achievement had been particularly satisfying because it validated her persistence in pursuing military service, despite repeated failures and widespread skepticism about her potential. The assignment that followed graduation had been to a classified unit specializing in precision operations that required the exact combination of technical skills and psychological characteristics that the experimental program had been designed to develop. For the first time in her military career, Sarah had found herself in an environment where her unique abilities were not just recognized, but essential for mission success. The transformation from failed recruit to specialized operator had taken nearly 3 years of persistent effort and multiple setbacks that would have convinced most people to abandon their military ambitions. Sarah's success had demonstrated that conventional training methods and evaluation criteria didn't always identify individuals with the potential to excel in specialized military roles that required unconventional combinations of skills and characteristics. Her journey through military training had taught her that failure often reflected mismatches between individual capabilities and institutional expectations rather than fundamental inadequacies that predicted future performance. The experimental program had provided opportunities to develop her potential in ways that conventional military training could never have achieved, ultimately leading to assignments that utilized her unique talents while serving important national security objectives. The phone call that would lead to her first operational deployment had come on a cold morning in January 2014, when her unit commander informed her that she had been selected for a mission that would test everything she had learned during her unconventional path to military specialization. The assignment would require her to demonstrate the skills and judgment that had been developed through years of persistent effort and innovative training methods. As she prepared for deployment, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her from failed basic training recruit to specialized operator, understanding that her success had been achieved not despite her early failures but because of the lessons learned through overcoming setbacks that had initially seemed insurmountable. Her story would become an example of how unconventional paths could lead to exceptional achievements when individual determination met institutional willingness to recognize and develop unique talents. The military career that had begun with such devastating failures was now positioned to achieve successes that would have seemed impossible during her darkest moments at basic training, proving that persistence and adaptation could overcome initial setbacks when combined with training methods that recognized and developed individual potential rather than requiring conformity to standardized expectations. The encrypted message that arrived at Sarah's secure workstation on March 15, 2014, contained coordinates that placed her team 800 miles from their current training facility in Virginia. Commander Patricia Walsh stood behind her as she decoded the mission parameters. her weathered face betraying none of the concern that Sarah could sense radiating from her commanding officer. The hostage situation in Syria had escalated beyond diplomatic solutions, with 12 American contractors trapped in a compound surrounded by hostile forces that had proven immune to conventional rescue attempts over the past 6 weeks. Sarah studied the satellite imagery that accompanied the mission briefing, noting terrain features and structural details that would influence her tactical options during what everyone understood would be a high-risk operation with minimal backup. Support. The compound sat in a valley surrounded by hills that provided excellent sniper positions, but also created complex wind patterns and atmospheric conditions that would challenge even the most experienced marksmen. The distance from potential firing positions to target areas exceeded anything she had encountered during training, requiring calculations that pushed beyond established doctrine for precision shooting. Commander Walsh had assembled her team with the kind of deliberate selection that reflected months of careful evaluation and preparation for exactly this type of mission. Staff Sergeant Marcus Johnson brought demolitions expertise from his previous assignment with Marine Force Reconnaissance, while Petty Officer Angela Rivera provided communications and intelligence analysis capabilities that had been honed during multiple deployments in Afghanistan. The fourth team member, Lieutenant Thomas Park, served as their tactical coordinator with battlefield experience that compensated for Sarah's limited operational background. The briefing room filled with tension. As Walsh outlined, mission parameters that revealed the complexity of political and military factors surrounding the hostage situation. The contractors had been captured while conducting infrastructure assessments for humanitarian organizations, making their rescue a matter of both moral obligation and international credibility for American commitments to civilian protection. In conflict zones, previous rescue attempts by special operations forces had failed due to sophisticated defensive preparations and strategic positioning that protected the compound from conventional assault methods. Intelligence reports indicated that the hostage-takers possessed anti-aircraft weapons that eliminated helicopter insertion options, while the surrounding terrain channeled ground approaches through killing zones that had been prepared with military precision. The enemy force consisted of approximately 40 well-trained fighters with combat experience and access to advanced weaponry that made direct confrontation extremely costly in terms of potential casualties and probability of mission success. Sarah's role in the mission had been defined by her exceptional long-range shooting capabilities, which offered the possibility of neutralizing key defensive positions from distances that placed her team beyond effective enemy response. The mission plan required her to eliminate specific targets whose deaths would create opportunities for ground assault teams to penetrate the compound's outer defenses, while minimizing risk to the hostages who were being held in the central building. The complexity of required shots exceeded standard military marksmanship protocols, demanding precision at ranges where environmental factors like wind speed, humidity, and atmospheric pressure could deflect bullets by several feet despite perfect aim and equipment. Sarah would need to make multiple sequential shots from a concealed position while accounting for changing conditions and enemy movement patterns that could only be predicted through careful observation and tactical intuition. The preparation phase consumed 3 weeks of intensive planning and rehearsal that tested every aspect of Sarah's technical skills and psychological readiness for combat operations. The team established a training facility that replicated the terrain and environmental conditions they would encounter in Syria, using detailed topographical data and weather patterns to create realistic scenarios for practice and evaluation of their tactical approach. Sarah spent countless hours studying ballistics, calculations, and atmospheric data that would influence her shooting accuracy under the specific conditions they expected to encounter during the mission. The mathematical complexity of long-range shooting required her to master variables that most snipers never needed to consider, including altitude effects on bullet trajectory and the impact of temperature variations on powder burn rates that could change point of impact by inches at extreme distances. Her equipment preparation involved customization of rifles and ammunition that had been specifically selected for the mission's unique requirements, with modifications that optimize performance under the environmental conditions and tactical constraints they would face in Syria. The technical specifications of her rifle scope and range-finding equipment required calibration procedures that took days of precise adjustment and verification to ensure accuracy at the distances she would need to engage targets. The psychological preparation proved as demanding as the technical aspects, with scenario-based training that simulated the stress and decision-making pressures she would face during actual combat operations. Sarah practiced making critical shots while under time pressure and physical stress that replicated the conditions of hostile fire and tactical urgency that could affect her performance during the real mission. Commander Walsh had insisted on multiple contingency plans that addressed every aspect of mission execution from insertion to extraction, with alternative approaches that could be implemented if primary plans were compromised by enemy action or changing battlefield conditions. The complexity of coordination required between Sarah's precision shooting and ground assault operations demanded rehearsal of timing and communication protocols that left no room for improvisation or miscommunication. The intelligence briefings revealed disturbing information about the hostage-takers' intentions and capabilities that added urgency to mission planning while highlighting the consequences of failure. Intercepted communications indicated that the hostages would be executed if rescue attempts continued, creating a narrow window of opportunity that required perfect execution of their tactical approach without opportunity for second attempts or recovery from mistakes. Sarah's shooting positions had been selected through analysis of satellite imagery and reconnaissance data that identified locations offering clear lines of sight to critical targets, while providing concealment and escape routes if her position was compromised by enemy counterfire. The primary shooting position required her to establish herself on a ridgeline nearly 2 miles from the target compound, at a distance that challenged the effective range of her equipment and required environmental calculations of unprecedented complexity. The infiltration route to her shooting position took the team through hostile territory where detection would result in mission failure and probable capture or death for all team members. Sarah carried specialized equipment that included not just her primary rifle and ammunition, but also backup weapons, communication gear, and survival supplies that could sustain her for several days if extraction was delayed by operational complications. The movement to Syria involved multiple transportation phases that concealed their destination and mission parameters from anyone not directly involved in the operation, with cover stories and documentation that provided plausible explanations for their presence in the region if they were intercepted by hostile forces or foreign intelligence services. The security protocols reflected the sensitive nature of their mission and the international consequences that would result from exposure of American military operations in Syrian territory. Their insertion into Syrian territory occurred during a moonless night that provided maximum concealment while creating navigation challenges that required precise coordination with GPS systems and terrain recognition techniques. The team moved through mountainous terrain that offered concealment, but also created physical demands that tested their conditioning and endurance during the 12-hour approach march to their operational area. Sarah's equipment load exceeded 60 pounds of specialized gear that included her primary rifle system, backup weapons, ammunition, communication equipment, and survival supplies necessary for extended operations in hostile territory. The weight, distribution, and balance required careful planning to maintain mobility and shooting stability, while carrying everything necessary for mission success and personal survival if extraction was delayed. The establishment of her primary shooting position required several hours of careful preparation that involved not just positioning her rifle and equipment, but also creating camouflaged concealment that would hide her location from enemy observation, while providing clear fields of fire to her assigned targets. The engineering aspects of position preparation required knowledge of soil composition, vegetation patterns, and sightline calculations that determined the effectiveness of her concealment and shooting capability. The final equipment checks and calibration procedures consumed additional time as Sarah verified that her rifle scope and range-finding equipment remained accurate after the physical stress of infiltration and position establishment. The precision required for her assigned shots left no margin for equipment malfunction or calibration errors that could result in mission failure and probable death for the hostages she was tasked with protecting. Communication with ground assault. Teams required coordination of timing and target priority that allowed her shooting to support their approach while minimizing their exposure to enemy fire. The tactical coordination involved split-second timing that required perfect understanding of ground team movements and enemy defensive positions that could only be achieved through extensive rehearsal and clear communication protocols. The intelligence. Updates that reached Sarah's position revealed changing enemy patrol patterns and defensive preparations that required adjustments to her target priority and shooting sequence. The enemy forces had demonstrated tactical sophistication that suggested military training and combat experience, making them dangerous opponents who would respond quickly and effectively to her. Initial shots of her follow-up engagements were not executed with perfect timing and accuracy. The weather conditions during her final preparation phase created atmospheric effects that influenced her ballistic calculations while providing concealment through morning mist that obscured visibility for both friendly and enemy forces. Sarah used the limited visibility to make final adjustments to her equipment and position while studying wind patterns and atmospheric conditions that would affect her shooting accuracy when the mission commenced. The psychological pressure of knowing that 12 lives depended on her shooting accuracy created mental stress that required deliberate management through breathing techniques and focus exercises that she had practiced during training. The weight of responsibility was unlike anything she had experienced during her military career, with consequences for failure that extended far beyond personal or professional setbacks, to include the deaths of innocent civilians who trusted American forces to secure their rescue. The radio check that preceded mission execution confirmed that all team members were in position and ready to commence operations according to the carefully rehearsed timeline that coordinated her shooting. With ground assault movements, Sarah's confirmation of readiness represented the culmination of months of preparation and years of training that had transformed her from a failed basic training recruit into a precision operator capable of executing missions that challenged the limits of human capability and equipment performance. The countdown to mission execution began with intelligence updates that confirmed enemy positions and hostage locations within the target compound, providing final verification of the tactical situation that had been studied and rehearsed during weeks of preparation. Sarah made final adjustments to her rifle scope and position, while monitoring environmental conditions that would influence her shooting accuracy during the critical minutes ahead. The morning mist that had provided concealment during her final preparations began to clear as atmospheric heating created wind patterns that Sarah incorporated into her ballistic calculations. The changing environmental conditions required continuous monitoring and adjustment of her shooting solutions while maintaining readiness to engage targets according to the mission timeline that left no room for delay or hesitation. The radio transmission that initiated mission execution came with the quiet professionalism that marked all special operations communications, conveying critical information without unnecessary drama or emotion. Sarah acknowledged her readiness while making final equipment checks that verified the accuracy and reliability of systems that would Determine mission success or failure within the next few minutes. The first target appeared in her rifle scope exactly where intelligence reports had predicted, confirming the accuracy of their planning while creating the first tactical decision point that would determine the course of subsequent mission events. Sarah's finger moved to her trigger as she completed final ballistic calculations that incorporated real-time environmental data with the theoretical preparation that had consumed weeks of intensive study and practice. The distance to her first target exceeded 3,000 yards, requiring shooting accuracy that challenged the limits of equipment and human capability while operating under combat stress that could degrade performance through physiological effects that training could minimize but never completely eliminate. Sarah controlled her breathing and heart rate while making final scope adjustments that would determine whether her first shot achieved the precision required for mission success. The ground assault team's readiness confirmation came through her earpiece as she settled into final shooting position, knowing that the next few minutes would test everything she had learned during her transformation from failed recruit to specialized operator. The weight of 12 lives rested on her ability to execute shots that pushed beyond established limits of military marksmanship while operating under conditions that offered no opportunity for correction or second attempts. The radio call that preceded her first shot carried the calm professionalism that masked the tension and uncertainty that accompanied every high-risk operation, with tactical communications that conveyed essential information while maintaining operational security that protected their mission from enemy interception. Sarah's response confirmed her readiness while final environmental observations updated her ballistic calculations for shots that would determine the fate of American hostages and the success of an operation that had consumed months of planning and preparation. The moment of truth arrived with the precision timing that characterized all aspects of their mission, as Sarah prepared to demonstrate whether years of unconventional training and natural ability could achieve results that conventional military doctrine considered beyond the realm of practical possibility. Her transformation from twice-failed recruit to precision specialist was about to be tested under conditions that would either validate her unique path to military excellence or expose the limitations of unconventional approaches to specialized operations. The crosshairs of her rifle scope settled on the first target as Sarah made final adjustments that incorporated wind speed, atmospheric pressure, and target movement into calculations that represented the culmination of everything she had learned during her remarkable journey from civilian failure to military specialist. The squeeze of her trigger would initiate a sequence of events that had been planned and rehearsed with meticulous attention to detail, but whose ultimate success depended on her ability to execute under pressure that no amount of training could completely replicate. The radio silence that preceded her first shot reflected the tension and anticipation that accompanied every critical moment in special operations, where months of preparation converged into seconds of execution that determined mission success or failure. Sarah's breathing controlled and her focus absolute, prepared to demonstrate the shooting skills that had been developed through years of persistent effort and innovative training methods that had transformed natural ability into military excellence. Her finger pressure on the trigger represented the culmination of a journey that had begun with devastating failure and evolved through determination and adaptation into an opportunity to achieve something extraordinary. The shot that would follow would test not just her technical skills, but also the mental toughness and commitment that had sustained her through setbacks that would have convinced most people to abandon their military ambitions entirely. The first shot shattered the morning silence with a sound that echoed across the Syrian valley like thunder, followed immediately by the distinctive crack of supersonic bullet impact against concrete 3,000 yards away. Through her rifle scope, Sarah watched the enemy sniper in the compound's main tower crumple and fall, his weapon clattering down stone steps as her perfectly calculated shot found its mark with surgical precision. The mathematical equations that had consumed weeks of preparation translated into devastating reality as the first phase of their rescue operation commenced exactly according to plan. The radio crackled with confirmation from Staff Sergeant Johnson's position as he observed the target elimination through his spotting scope. The enemy's primary overwatch position had been neutralized, creating a critical gap in their defensive network that would allow the ground assault team to advance through previously impassable terrain. Sarah's shot had been so precise that the remaining enemy forces initially failed to recognize that their perimeter had been compromised, buying precious seconds for their coordinated assault to develop. Her second target materialized in the scope as predicted by their intelligence analysis, an enemy machine gunner repositioning to cover the approach route that Lieutenant Park's team needed to traverse. The distance calculation required immediate adjustment for changing wind conditions as morning thermal currents created atmospheric disturbances that could deflect her bullet by inches at extreme range. Sarah's breathing steadied as she incorporated real-time environmental data into ballistic solutions that pushed her equipment and skills to their absolute limits. The trigger squeeze sent another precisely aimed round across the impossible distance, striking the machine gunner's center mass as he attempted to establish his weapon position. The impact knocked him backward into the sandbag emplacement, his weapon tumbling from nerveless fingers as Sarah's second successful engagement eliminated another critical defensive position. The enemy's coordinated defense began fragmenting as their carefully planned fields of fire developed fatal gaps that Park's assault team could exploit. Petty Officer Rivera's voice cut through the tactical radio chatter with intelligence updates that revealed enemy movement patterns responding to the sniper attacks. The hostile forces were attempting to locate Sarah's position while reinforcing remaining defensive positions, creating opportunities for additional precision shots that could further degrade their combat effectiveness. The enemy's tactical confusion provided temporary advantages that needed to be exploited quickly before they adapted to the unexpected assault methodology. Sarah's third target required the most challenging shot of her military career, engaging an enemy commander who was attempting to coordinate defensive responses from a partially concealed position behind concrete barriers. The target exposure would last only seconds as he moved between covered positions, requiring her to anticipate his movement pattern while accounting for bullet flight time across the extended distance. The mathematical complexity of leading a moving target at 3,000 yards exceeded anything she had practiced during training. Her shot selection required split-second timing as the enemy commander appeared in her scope's field of view, moving with tactical awareness that suggested military training and combat experience. Sarah's trigger control had to be perfect as she fired at where the target would be when her bullet arrived, rather than where she could see him at the moment of firing. The physics of extreme long-range shooting demanded predictions that bordered on intuition rather than pure calculation. The bullet's flight time across the valley seemed eternal as Sarah maintained scope focus on the predicted impact point, watching for confirmation of hit or miss that would determine whether her most difficult shot had achieved the precision required for mission success. The enemy commander's sudden collapse behind the concrete barrier provided dramatic confirmation that her calculated lead and environmental adjustments had resulted in another perfect shot at an impossible distance. Lieutenant Park's assault team moved immediately after the third target elimination, advancing through terrain that had been transformed from impregnable defensive ground into accessible approach routes by Sarah's systematic destruction of enemy overwatch positions. The coordination between her precision shooting and ground assault movements demonstrated the tactical synchronization that months of rehearsal had developed into nearly perfect battlefield choreography. The enemy forces remaining in the compound began displaying signs of panic and tactical confusion as their defensive network collapsed under precisely targeted attacks that seemed to anticipate their every movement. Sarah's ability to eliminate key personnel from extreme range created psychological pressure that degraded their combat effectiveness beyond the purely physical impact of casualty losses. The surviving defenders struggled to maintain organized resistance against an assault that appeared to possess supernatural accuracy and coordination. Commander Walsh's voice reached Sarah through encrypted communications, confirming that satellite intelligence indicated successful penetration of the compound's outer defenses by Park's ground team. The hostage rescue operation had transitioned from the initial precision shooting phase to close-quarters combat that would determine whether 12 American contractors would return home alive or become victims of a rescue attempt that had failed despite perfect long-range shooting. Sarah maintained overwatch responsibilities as the ground assault developed, ready to provide precision fire support if enemy reinforcements appeared or if Park's team encountered unexpected resistance during their advance toward the central building where hostages were being held. Her elevated position provided comprehensive observation of the tactical situation, while keeping her available for additional shooting requirements that might emerge as the operation evolved. The sound of explosions echoed across the valley as Johnson's demolition charges eliminated remaining defensive barriers, clearing paths for final assault on the building where intelligence indicated the hostages were confined. The coordinated destruction of enemy positions through combined precision, shooting, and explosive breaching demonstrated the tactical flexibility that had been developed through innovative training methods and unconventional personnel selection. Radio reports from Park's team indicated contact with hostile forces inside the compound as they advanced toward the hostage location, with firefights that tested their close-quarters combat skills while Sarah provided overwatch support from her distant position. The transition from long-range precision shooting to urban combat support required different tactical considerations while maintaining readiness to engage any threats that emerged within her field of observation. The breakthrough moment came when Park's team reached the central building and confirmed visual contact with American hostages who appeared to be alive and capable of movement during evacuation procedures. The successful penetration of enemy defenses validated months of planning and preparation while creating new tactical challenges related to safely extracting 12 civilians from hostile territory under continuing enemy pressure. Sarah's final shot of the operation eliminated an enemy sniper who had positioned himself to interdict the extraction route, engaging a target that required shooting through a narrow window opening at maximum range while accounting for glass deflection that could alter bullet trajectory. The technical complexity of shooting through intermediate barriers pushed her marksmanship skills into uncharted territory where equipment limitations and environmental factors created variables that no training could completely address. The precision of her final engagement cleared the path for hostage evacuation while demonstrating shooting capability that exceeded established military doctrine for long-range marksmanship. Sarah's systematic elimination of enemy defensive positions had enabled a rescue operation that conventional tactical approaches had been unable to accomplish despite multiple previous attempts by elite special operations forces. The helicopter extraction that followed occurred under cover of continuing overwatch as Sarah maintained her position until all hostages and ground team members had been safely evacuated from the combat zone. Her role as precision overwatch required her to remain in potentially compromised territory longer than other team members, accepting personal risk to ensure mission success and team member safety during the most vulnerable phase of their operation. The flight back to their forward operating base provided the first opportunity for tactical debriefing and assessment of mission outcomes that had exceeded even optimistic projections for success. All 12 hostages had been rescued without serious injury, while enemy casualties included every key defensive position that had prevented previous rescue attempts from achieving their objectives. The operation would be studied as an example of how precision shooting could enable rescue missions that conventional approaches could not accomplish. Commander Walsh's initial assessment praised the tactical coordination and individual performance that had achieved what many considered an impossible mission under circumstances that challenged every aspect of their training and equipment capabilities. Sarah's shooting performance had eliminated 7 enemy combatants at distances that pushed beyond established limits of military marksmanship while operating under combat stress that could have degraded accuracy through physiological and psychological factors. The formal debriefing process revealed the exceptional nature of Sarah's tactical contribution to mission success, with shooting accuracy that had achieved 100% target elimination at ranges where even minor environmental factors could cause complete misses. Her transformation from failed basic training recruit to precision specialist capable of extraordinary battlefield performance had been validated through the most demanding operational test possible. The intelligence analysis that followed confirmed that enemy defensive preparations had been specifically designed to counter conventional rescue attempts, with positions and equipment that would have made traditional assault methods prohibitively costly in terms of both military casualties and hostage survival. Sarah's ability to neutralize key defensive elements from extreme range had enabled tactical approaches that circumvented enemy defensive advantages while minimizing risk to rescued personnel. The medical evaluation of rescued hostages revealed the psychological and physical stress they had endured during 6 weeks of captivity, making their survival and successful extraction even more significant as a validation of American commitments to civilian protection in hostile environments. The mission's success had implications beyond the immediate rescue, demonstrating capabilities that would influence future operations and tactical doctrine development. Admiral James Mitchell arrived at their forward operating base within 48 hours of mission completion, representing the highest level of Navy leadership to personally evaluate an operation that had achieved results previously considered beyond practical possibility. His presence indicated the strategic significance that senior commanders attached to tactical innovations that could expand American operational capabilities in complex international environments. The private meeting between Admiral Mitchell and Sarah lasted over 2 hours with detailed discussion of her unconventional path to military excellence and the training methods that had developed her exceptional capabilities. The Admiral's questions revealed genuine interest in understanding how someone who had failed conventional military training could achieve operational success that exceeded the performance of traditionally qualified personnel. Sarah's explanation of her development through experimental training programs highlighted the value of alternative approaches to personnel selection and development that recognized individual potential rather than conformity to standardized criteria. Her success demonstrated that military effectiveness could be achieved through innovative methods that identified and developed unique combinations of skills and psychological characteristics. The Admiral's assessment concluded with recognition that Sarah's case represented a fundamental challenge to conventional assumptions about military training and personnel development, suggesting that institutional changes might be necessary to identify and develop similar unconventional talent that traditional methods might overlook or eliminate through inappropriate selection criteria. The promotion ceremony that followed occurred in a classified briefing room with minimal fanfare, but maximum significance for Sarah's military career and future operational assignments. Admiral Mitchell personally pinned Lieutenant Commander rank insignia on her uniform while announcing her selection for assignment to the Navy's most elite Special Operations Unit, representing unprecedented recognition for someone whose military career had begun with such devastating failures. The citation accompanying her promotion emphasized her exceptional marksmanship skills and tactical innovation that had enabled mission success under circumstances that challenged established operational doctrine. The formal recognition validated years of persistent effort and institutional support that had transformed natural ability into military excellence through unconventional training methods and specialized development programs. The new assignment carried responsibilities that would require Sarah to develop training programs and tactical procedures for other personnel who might possess similar unconventional backgrounds and specialized capabilities. Her experience would inform institutional changes designed to identify and develop talent that traditional military systems might fail to recognize or appropriately utilize. The press conference that announced successful hostage rescue carefully avoided details that might compromise operational security or reveal specific tactical methods, but highlighted American commitment to civilian protection and the exceptional performance of military personnel who had achieved mission success under extremely challenging circumstances. The public recognition provided validation for families of rescued hostages, while demonstrating military capabilities that served broader, strategic communication objectives. Sarah's parents contacted her for the first time in over 5 years, following news reports about the successful rescue operation, expressing pride and amazement at their daughter's transformation from failed recruit to decorated special operations officer. The reconciliation represented healing of family relationships that had been damaged by their inability to understand or support her military ambitions during the most difficult periods of her career development. The conversation with her parents revealed their gradual recognition that her decision to pursue military service had been based on accurate self-assessment rather than rebellion against their academic expectations. They acknowledged that her unique talents and personality characteristics were better suited to military service than traditional academic and professional paths they had tried to impose through well-intentioned but misguided parental pressure. Tom Bradley's reaction to news of Sarah's success included satisfaction that his early recognition of her potential had been validated through achievements that exceeded even his optimistic projections for her military career. His support during her darkest moments of failure and self-doubt had provided crucial encouragement that sustained her through setbacks that might otherwise have ended her military ambitions permanently. The training facility in Virginia, where Sarah had finally found appropriate instruction and development opportunities, became a model for expanded programs designed to identify and develop unconventional military talent. Her success provided evidence that alternative approaches to personnel selection and training could achieve results that traditional methods might never accomplish through conventional institutional processes. The tactical doctrine that emerged from analysis of her mission performance influenced special operations planning throughout the military, with recognition that precision shooting capabilities could enable rescue and assault operations that conventional approaches could not accomplish. Sarah's innovative application of marksmanship skills to tactical challenges created new possibilities for mission planning and execution. 6 months after the Syrian rescue operation, Sarah found herself addressing a classified briefing for senior military leaders about innovative approaches to special operations training and personnel development. Her presentation emphasized the importance of recognizing and developing individual potential, rather than requiring conformity to standardized training models that might eliminate personnel with exceptional but unconventional capabilities. The audience included generals and admirals whose own careers had been built through traditional military advancement, but who recognized that changing warfare requirements demanded innovative approaches to personnel development and tactical operations. Sarah's transformation from failed recruit to exceptional operator provided a case study for institutional adaptation that could improve military effectiveness through better utilization of human resources. The questions that followed her presentation revealed genuine interest from senior leadership in expanding programs that could identify and develop similar unconventional talent throughout the military services. Her success had demonstrated that institutional willingness to experiment with alternative training methods could achieve results that justified investment in programs that challenged traditional assumptions about military personnel development. The legacy of Sarah's journey extended beyond her individual achievement to influence institutional policies that would affect thousands of future military personnel whose unique talents might be overlooked or eliminated by conventional selection and training processes. Her story became an example of how persistent individual effort combined with institutional innovation could achieve extraordinary results that benefited both personal development and national security objectives. Years later, when military historians analyzed the evolution of special operations capabilities during the early 21st century, they consistently identified Sarah's case as a turning point that demonstrated the value of unconventional approaches to personnel development and tactical innovation. Her willingness to persist through repeated failures while institutions gradually developed better methods for recognizing and developing her potential had created lasting changes in military training and operational doctrine. The young woman from Des Moines, who had been dismissed as unsuitable for military service, had become a model for how individual determination, combined with institutional adaptation, could achieve results that seemed impossible when evaluated through conventional criteria. Her legacy lived on in every military program that valued individual potential over standardized conformity, and in every operation that succeeded through innovative tactical approaches that challenged traditional limitations on what could be accomplished through human excellence and technological capability. The encrypted communication that arrived at Sarah's desk 5 years after the Syrian operation contained coordinates for a location that would test every advancement in military precision shooting since her legendary rescue mission. The compound in Afghanistan's Kunar province represented a new category of tactical challenge, where enemy forces had studied American special operations methods and developed countermeasures specifically designed to neutralize the long-range shooting capabilities that had proven so effective in previous conflicts. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen stood before a wall-mounted display showing satellite imagery of terrain that seemed impossible to approach undetected, much less establish effective shooting positions capable of supporting rescue operations. The enemy had learned from their defeats, positioning their stronghold in a location where traditional sniper overwatch could not provide the angles and distances necessary for precision fire support. The 12 aid workers trapped inside had been held for 8 months while conventional rescue attempts failed, against defensive preparations that incorporated lessons learned from studying American tactical innovations. The briefing room at Naval Special Warfare Command filled with the quiet tension that accompanied discussions of operations where success seemed to require capabilities that exceeded current tactical doctrine and equipment limitations. Captain Michael Torres, the mission commander, outlined intelligence assessments that painted a picture of enemy sophistication that challenged fundamental assumptions about American technological and tactical superiority in precision operations. The defensive network surrounding the target compound included multiple radar systems capable of detecting approaching aircraft, anti-materiel rifles positioned to engage snipers at ranges exceeding 4,000 meters, and underground tunnel systems that allowed defenders to reposition without exposure to overhead surveillance. The enemy had created a tactical environment specifically designed to neutralize the precision shooting advantages that American forces had relied upon during previous rescue operations. Sarah studied the topographical analysis that revealed why conventional sniper deployment would be ineffective against this particular target, noting how the enemy had selected terrain features and constructed defensive positions that eliminated traditional shooting angles while creating interlocking fields of fire that could engage American forces at distances where return fire would be ineffective. The tactical problem required solutions that pushed beyond established limits of equipment performance and human capability. The intelligence briefing continued with analysis of enemy communications that revealed their confidence in defensive preparations that had been tested against simulated American assault methods. The hostile forces understood that their strategic value lay not just in holding hostages, but in demonstrating that American special operations capabilities could be neutralized through careful tactical planning and appropriate defensive measures. The propaganda value of successfully resisting American rescue attempts had become as important as the original hostage-taking objectives. Master Chief Petty Officer Diana Rodriguez presented equipment assessments that highlighted the technological challenges associated with engaging targets at ranges that exceeded the effective capabilities of standard military firearms and ammunition. The distances involved would require custom ammunition loads and rifle modifications that pushed equipment beyond manufacturer specifications while operating under environmental conditions that could degrade performance through temperature extremes and atmospheric variations. The technical requirements for successful target engagement included ballistic calculations that incorporated factors rarely encountered in standard military operations, including extreme altitude effects on bullet trajectory and atmospheric density variations that could alter projectile performance in unpredictable ways. Sarah would need to master environmental physics that challenged the theoretical limits of precision shooting while developing practical solutions for equipment and ammunition limitations. The timeline for mission execution provided only 6 weeks for developing tactical solutions to challenges that had never been successfully addressed in military operations, requiring innovation and adaptation that compressed years of normal development cycles into intensive preparation periods that tested human endurance and creative problem-solving capabilities. The compressed schedule reflected intelligence indicating that hostage executions would begin if rescue attempts continued to fail. Sarah's preparation began with consultation with civilian shooting experts whose competition experience included engaging targets at distances that exceeded military requirements, drawing on technical knowledge developed through precision shooting sports that pushed equipment and human performance beyond conventional limitations. The civilian expertise provided insights into ballistic optimization and equipment modification that military training had never addressed. The ammunition development process required collaboration with ballistics experts, who created custom loads specifically designed for the unique combination of distance, altitude, and environmental conditions that Sarah would encounter during the mission. The precision manufacturing tolerances for custom ammunition exceeded normal military specifications while incorporating materials and design features that optimized performance under the specific conditions identified through intelligence analysis and environmental modeling. Her rifle system underwent modifications that included barrel replacement with custom manufactured components designed to optimize accuracy at extreme ranges while maintaining reliability under field conditions that could include temperature variations and physical stress from extended deployment in hostile territory. The technical specifications required manufacturing precision that challenged the capabilities of even specialized military contractors. The scope and range-finding equipment represented the latest developments in optical technology with custom calibration procedures that accounted for the specific ballistic characteristics of her modified rifle and ammunition combination. The precision required for range finding at distances exceeding 5,000 meters demanded optical systems that operated at the theoretical limits of current technology while maintaining durability sufficient for field deployment. Physical conditioning for the mission included training at high altitudes that replicated the atmospheric conditions Sarah would encounter in Afghanistan, with exercises designed to maintain shooting stability and mental focus while operating under the physiological stress of extreme altitude and physical exertion. The conditioning program addressed both cardiovascular demands and the specific muscle control required for precision shooting under adverse conditions. The psychological preparation involved scenario-based training that simulated the mental pressure of engaging multiple targets in sequence while knowing that mission failure would result in hostage executions and the probable compromise of American special operations capabilities for future missions. The stress management techniques required mastery of mental discipline that could maintain focus and decision-making capability under pressure that exceeded normal human experience. Navigation training for insertion into hostile territory included master of GPS systems and terrain recognition techniques that would allow Sarah to reach shooting positions that had been identified through satellite analysis but never accessed by American forces. The approach routes required movement through terrain controlled by enemy forces who had demonstrated sophisticated surveillance capabilities and rapid response to intrusion attempts. The mission planning phase revealed the complexity of coordinating precision shooting with ground assault operations when traditional communication methods might be compromised by enemy electronic warfare capabilities that had proven effective against previous American operations. Sarah would need to execute her shooting sequence according to predetermined timing while adapting to battlefield conditions that could not be anticipated through intelligence analysis. Equipment testing under simulated mission conditions required range facilities that could replicate the distances and environmental factors she would encounter in Afghanistan, with verification procedures that confirmed equipment performance under conditions that challenged manufacturer specifications and established military testing protocols. The testing revealed equipment limitations that required additional modifications and backup procedures. The final equipment configuration included backup systems for every critical component, with redundant rifles, optical systems, and ammunition supplies that could compensate for equipment failures or damage during mission execution. The equipment load exceeded normal carrying capacity for individual operators, requiring specialized transportation and deployment procedures that maintained operational security while ensuring equipment availability. Team integration training with ground assault forces required development of new communication protocols and coordination procedures that could function effectively when traditional command and control systems might be compromised by enemy countermeasures. The training emphasized pre-planned coordination sequences that could continue functioning even if communication systems failed during critical mission phases. The intelligence updates that arrived during final preparation phases revealed additional enemy defensive improvements that required adjustments to tactical planning and equipment configuration. The enemy's adaptive capabilities demonstrated their understanding of American operational methods while highlighting the need for innovative approaches that could overcome defensive measures specifically designed to counter precision shooting advantages. Weather analysis for the operational area indicated atmospheric conditions that would create additional challenges for long-range shooting accuracy, with wind patterns and temperature variations that required continuous monitoring and ballistic adjustment capabilities. The environmental factors added complexity to shooting calculations while creating operational windows that limited mission timing to specific periods when conditions might permit successful target engagement. The insertion phase required transportation through hostile airspace using aircraft and flight profiles designed to avoid enemy radar detection while delivering Sarah's team to positions where they could establish shooting positions without alerting defensive forces to American presence in the operational area. The aviation support involved specialized aircraft and crews trained for clandestine insertion operations under conditions where detection would result in mission failure. Final mission briefings confirmed intelligence assessments while providing updated enemy positions and defensive configurations that would influence target priority and engagement sequences during the operation. The briefings emphasized the unprecedented nature of the tactical challenges while acknowledging that mission success would require performance that exceeded all previous achievements in military precision shooting. The equipment final checks and calibration procedures consumed the final hours before deployment, with verification of rifle systems, optical equipment, and ammunition performance that would determine mission success or failure during the critical engagement phase. Sarah's preparation represented the culmination of decades of military innovation and individual development that had transformed precision shooting from a specialized skill into a decisive tactical capability. The helicopter flight toward Afghanistan carried a team whose success would influence the future development of American Special Operations capabilities while determining the fate of 12 aid workers, whose rescue had become a test of national commitment to civilian protection in hostile environments. Sarah's transformation from failed recruit to military innovator was about to face its ultimate validation through an operation that pushed beyond all previous limits of human and technological capability. The mountain air at 12,000 feet altitude burned Sarah's lungs as she settled into the shooting position that had taken 18 hours of careful approach to reach undetected. The enemy compound lay sprawled across the valley floor nearly 6,000 meters below, a distance that challenged every assumption about the effective range of military firearms. Through her custom scope, she could see the fortified positions that intelligence had warned would make this the most difficult shot in military history. The radio silence that had been maintained during her approach continued as Sarah began the complex process of environmental analysis that would determine whether the impossible shot could be attempted under current atmospheric conditions. Wind speed indicators scattered throughout the valley showed inconsistent patterns that created bullet drift calculations of unprecedented complexity, while temperature differentials between her elevated position and the target area introduced ballistic variables that pushed beyond established shooting science. Her breathing slowed to the deliberate rhythm that had been perfected through years of precision shooting development as she observed target movement patterns through the compound below. The terrorist leader whose elimination would trigger the coordinated rescue of 12 aid workers moved between buildings according to security protocols that provided only brief exposure windows, requiring split-second timing that allowed no margin for hesitation or equipment malfunction. The custom ammunition she had developed specifically for this mission represented the pinnacle of ballistic engineering, with projectile design and powder charges that optimized performance at distances where normal military rounds would lose effectiveness entirely. The mathematical precision required for successful target engagement had consumed weeks of computer modeling and testing that pushed beyond the boundaries of established ballistic science into theoretical territory where equations became more important than experience. Sarah's finger found the trigger as atmospheric conditions aligned with optimal shooting parameters, creating a brief window of opportunity that might not reoccur for hours or days. The crosshair settled on empty space where her calculations predicted the target would appear when her bullet completed its flight across the impossible distance, requiring her to fire at shadows and mathematical projections rather than visible threats. The trigger brake released a shot that would travel for nearly 8 seconds before reaching its intended target, crossing terrain that included multiple wind zones and atmospheric layers that could deflect the projectile by meters despite perfect aim and equipment. Sarah maintained scope focus on the impact area while her bullet traversed the valley, knowing that the next few seconds would determine whether years of preparation and innovation had achieved the impossible or fallen short. When precision mattered most, the target's appearance in her scope exactly matched her timing calculations as he emerged from behind concrete barriers, moving with the confident stride of someone who believed his position was beyond the reach of American weapon systems. Sarah's bullet arrived at the precise moment when mathematical prediction intersected with tactical reality, striking with devastating accuracy that eliminated the terrorist leader and triggered immediate chaos throughout the compound. Ground assault teams moved instantly upon confirmation of target elimination, advancing through defensive networks that had been temporarily disrupted by the psychological shock of losing their commander to what appeared to be supernatural precision. The coordination between Sarah's shooting and ground operations demonstrated tactical innovation that would influence military doctrine for decades, proving that properly executed precision fires could enable rescue missions under previously impossible circumstances. The rescue operation that followed unfolded with the mechanical precision that characterized special operations at their finest. With 12 aid workers extracted from hostile territory, while enemy forces struggled to maintain organized resistance without their leadership structure, Sarah's single shot had transformed an impregnable defensive position into a vulnerable target that conventional assault forces could neutralize through coordinated attack. The helicopter extraction that carried the rescued aid workers to safety represented validation of tactical theories that had been considered impossible by military experts who understood the limitations of conventional weapon systems. Sarah's achievement had demonstrated that human innovation and determination could overcome technological barriers when supported by institutional willingness to experiment with unconventional approaches to military challenges. Admiral Patricia Hayes arrived at the forward operating base within hours of mission completion, representing the highest levels of Navy leadership who recognized that Sarah's tactical innovation had implications far beyond the immediate rescue success. The meeting that followed would determine how her achievements would influence future military operations and training programs throughout the special operations community. The private conversation between Admiral Hayes and Sarah revealed institutional recognition that her transformation from failed recruit to tactical innovator represented a fundamental challenge to traditional assumptions about military personnel development and operational capabilities. Her success had demonstrated that unconventional approaches to training and equipment development could achieve results that conventional methods might never accomplish. The promotion ceremony that followed occurred in a classified setting with minimal participants but maximum significance for the future of American special operations capabilities. Admiral Hayes personally awarded Sarah the rank of commander while announcing her selection to lead the Navy's newly created Precision Operations Development Center, representing unprecedented authority for someone whose military career had begun with such spectacular failures. The citation accompanying her promotion emphasized her revolutionary contributions to military tactics and equipment development that had expanded American operational capabilities while saving lives through innovative application of precision shooting techniques. The formal recognition validated institutional investment in experimental programs that had identified and developed her unique talents despite their unconventional nature. The new assignment carried responsibilities for developing training programs and tactical procedures that would identify and develop other personnel with similar potential for innovative military applications. Sarah's experience would inform institutional changes designed to recognize and cultivate talent that traditional military systems might overlook through inappropriate selection criteria or training methods. The speech Sarah delivered to this assembled special operations leadership emphasized the importance of institutional flexibility and innovation in developing human capabilities that could address emerging tactical challenges. Her presentation highlighted how individual persistence combined with organizational willingness to experiment could achieve extraordinary results that benefited both military effectiveness and national security objectives. The question period that followed revealed widespread interest in expanding programs that could identify and develop unconventional military talent throughout the armed forces. Sarah's transformation had demonstrated that military excellence could emerge from unexpected sources when institutions provided appropriate support and development opportunities for individuals whose potential might not be apparent through conventional evaluation methods. The training center that emerged from her recommendations would become a model for innovative approaches to military personnel development, emphasizing individual potential over standardized conformity while maintaining the discipline and teamwork essential for military effectiveness. The programs developed under her leadership would influence thousands of future military personnel whose unique talents might contribute to American tactical advantages. 3 years later, Commander Sarah Chen stood before a gathering of international military leaders who had come to study American innovations in precision operations and personnel development. Her presentation outlined tactical developments that had revolutionized special operations, while demonstrating how institutional adaptation could maximize human potential through innovative training and equipment development. The audience included generals and admirals from allied nations whose own military institutions were grappling with similar challenges related to personnel development and tactical innovation. Sarah's success had become an international case study for how military organizations could identify and develop exceptional talent while adapting to changing operational requirements. The legacy of her journey extended far beyond individual achievement to influence military thinking throughout the international community, with training programs and tactical procedures that incorporated lessons learned from her unconventional path to military excellence. Her story had become proof that institutional willingness to challenge traditional assumptions could unlock human potential that conventional approaches might never discover. The final recognition of Sarah's contributions came in the form of a classified medal ceremony where she received the Navy Cross for extraordinary heroism and tactical innovation that had saved lives while advancing American military capabilities. The citation acknowledged her transformation from failed recruit to military innovator, whose achievements had influenced tactical doctrine and training methods throughout the special operations community. Years later, when military historians analyzed the evolution of precision operations during the early 21st century, they consistently identified Sarah's case as the pivotal example of how individual determination combined with institutional innovation could achieve results that seemed impossible when evaluated through conventional criteria. Her willingness to persist through repeated failures while military institutions gradually developed better methods for recognizing and developing unconventional talent had created lasting improvements in American military effectiveness. Young woman from Iowa who had twice failed basic training had become the architect of tactical innovations that would influence military operations for generations, proving that extraordinary achievement could emerge from the most unlikely circumstances when talent met opportunity through persistent effort and institutional support. Her legacy lived on in every military program that valued individual potential over conformity, and in every impossible mission that succeeded through the application of human excellence to technological capability. Her story remained classified for security reasons, but its influence spread through military institutions worldwide as an example of how organizations could maximize human potential through innovative approaches to training and development. Sarah Chen had proven that the distance between failure and greatness could be measured not in time or talent, but in the willingness to persist when others would surrender to conventional limitations. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.